People think that owned dogs have it so much better than street dogs in Sri Lanka, but so often this is not the case. I was horrified to see the state that Yuna was in when we found her. Yuna was a German Shepherd dog, so presumably owned. We found her when she had been presumably dumped on the road and left to die. Some kind people had seen her, never seen her in that location before, managed to take her in and trap her in their outside toilet before they called us. This whole time she did have a chain around her neck, which again indicated that she is owned. And all too often we see owned dogs, pedigree dogs, dumped on the street when they become ill or injured or just too much hassle for the owners to deal with. And this was no different with Yuna. She was in a horrific state. When we found her, she was curled up in a ball in someone's outside toilet with no hair on her back, multiple maggot wounds, too many to count. They were all over her back, almost all communicating under the skin. There was not one bit of healthy tissue on her back, and she was so close to death. She didn't even have the energy to kind of lift her head when we walked into this toilet. We just got these big eyeballs looking up at us, staring at us, kind of pleading for help, honestly. It was one of the saddest things I've seen. She was covered in flies. They were buzzing around her as though she was just dead meat waiting to be eaten by maggots. Essentially, she already was being eaten by maggots. It was just horrible. And just to see her almost defeated, like very, very, very on the brink of passing away, it was just so sad to see, and so sad to know that she has an owner. She had an owner. Like, how is this possible? What kept me up at night with Yuna was the thought of, what if those amazing people hadn't taken her in and given us a call? Many people wouldn't take her in. She stunk. She was covered in maggots, covered in flies, buzzing around her. Lots of people would have thought, oh no, not touching that. But these lovely people took her in and gave us a call. And it doesn't bear thinking about, how painful a death she would have had if we didn't get to her. And death was certain. Death was probably hours away, honestly. And it wouldn't have been nice. She was getting eaten from the inside out by maggots. And had no one to look out for her. Even though she had an owner, she had a family, and they've just, she'd kind of been dumped when she really needed them the most. It's heartbreaking to think of what Yuna's next few hours or days, if she could manage to push through, would have looked like if we hadn't managed to get to her when we did. When we got her to the hospital, that in itself was hard. We didn't even know where to touch her. It was so difficult to lift her because every part of her body was just red raw. Of course, we gave her pain relief, but when we got to the hospital, I'll be honest, we didn't know where to start. Usually with maggot wounds, you have a big maggot wound. You have something to address. It's just staring you in the face. You treat that wound. But with Yuna, there were so many little pockets. And I think it's difficult to know, but I think what had happened is that she'd had severe skin disease. So she potentially had mange, which is a very itchy mite, maybe something along those lines. And she'd scratched and opened up little wounds all over her body because she was so itchy. And all of those little wounds then became maggot infested. So it wasn't a case of this one thing to address. It was everywhere. So we spent hours and hours and hours painstakingly removing all of these maggots by hand, trying to work out which wounds communicated with other wounds. We had her sedated at this point. That was risky in itself, but we couldn't not intervene, because if we left those wounds, she would have died from that at this stage. The maggots they were everywhere. Fortunately, she was a young dog. She still had some fight left in her, such a sweetheart. and we managed to remove the maggots. We dressed the wounds. It was a really stressful 72 hours because I was terrified to see what was going to be underneath these dressings when we did remove them. Was there going to be any skin left? Who knew? Fortunately for Yuna, there were bits of skin left, but she had a long healing process ahead of her. So she had very, very frequent dressing changes, lots of antibiotics. She had tick fever, so we had to treat that. She was in a lot of pain, so we were having to manage that, trying to get her blood pressure back up, correcting her dehydration. Yuna was so thin. She was on the verge of death. She was so flat, she could barely lift her head, and we put this food in front of her and she devoured it. And it was mixed emotions. I was so sad to see that a dog was in that state, that they were that hungry. But it was also just such relief to know that she was with us. She was never going to go hungry again. We'd found her, we could show her a better life than what she'd been shown to this point. As a 1 or 2 year old dog, she was still a baby, and she just had the worst start in life. When we first found Yuna in that toilet, she just looked so defeated, but honestly, it did not take long for her spirit to shine through. The very next morning, after all of this had happened, we did manage to get a little tail wag out of her. Such a nice feeling to know that they feel the safety that you're offering them. They feel the love, they feel the comfort. They know they're in good hands, and they know they can relax and give you a tail wag when they've just got zero energy to do so. It's really, really nice to see. Ultimately, Yuna just started to improve at breakneck speed. So it was quite a slow process to begin with. And then after around 3 weeks, her skin just started improving so much. We were working on rebuilding that skin barrier as well. And so she was having lots of supplements. We were trying to improve her skin health. And we just noticed that hair started to grow back through. She was becoming super playful. She was getting a little bit chubbier. Seeing Yuna bound around the garden, all gangly legs, this young German Shepherd, without a care in the world, just a few weeks after she'd been at death's door. Just nice to see that she actually didn't seem to be traumatized by what she'd been through. She did seem to be able to bounce back. 8 weeks is a really long time for a patient to be in hospital, and of course, inevitably, we fell head over heels in love with Yuna. And one of our veterinary care assistants, Chattery in particular, became enamoured with Yuna. And so before we knew it, and really not a surprise to anyone, Chattery is knocking on the office door, "Can I adopt Yuna?" And we were so thrilled at this outcome. They were inseparable. They had such an incredible relationship, and we couldn't think of a better home for Yuna to go to, honestly. It was a really nice full circle moment. Chattery had been there at her rescue. So it was incredible to see this bond form with those guys over the course of the 8 weeks. And I knew that Chattery was going to give Yuna the most amazing home. It's really hard to know what Yuna's life was like before. We didn't actually ever meet her owners. But knowing that she was dumped so unceremoniously on the street while suffering in such a horrendous way does lead me to believe it probably was not the best life. To think of that and the awful feelings that brings up in you, and then to look at her life now where she's so loved. She goes to the beach every day and has swims. She hangs out with Chattery and her daughter. They're obsessed with her, constantly brushing her, making her look beautiful. She could not have had a better result in terms of the transformation of her whole life, not just her health or her body, the transformation of her whole life. Those feelings that they potentially have never felt before, which is safety, love, care, compassion. And to know that Yuna now has that for the rest of her days, it's just so incredible, and it's all I could hope for her. If you would like to hear more stories like Yuna's, I know this one was a little bit sad but had an amazing happy ending, then please do like and subscribe. You have no idea how much it means to us. It can allow us to treat so many more patients in positions like Yuna and just make sure that they can have the life that they really, really, really deserve. So yeah, do please give us a little follow and a like if you can.